Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction, sir, and for your kind words. Thank you very much, everyone of the dais, especially to Mr. Mittersain also. We've been in touch for a long time and planning this event and the particular date, and I'm very sorry for any trouble that I have caused you in fixing the details of this event. But I would like to say this at the very start that that I too have very much looked forward to being with you this evening. Sometimes we feel that what we do remains restricted to our TV studio. And it is very important for people like me to come out sometimes of the studio to share not just the story of the day, not just the expose of the day, not just the headline of the day, but to share with you why we do what we do. And today I want to have a chat with you about more about what we do, what has been the compelling reason for Times Now doing things the way it has done. Why do people watch our channel? Is a question I have asked myself for a very long time. Why am I a journalist? Why do I come to television every night and read the news? Is there something more than television rating points that I'm striving to achieve? Is there something more than my own ego, my own hubris, my own sense of what I am, my own career advancement that I seek to do? Is a question that comes to me very often. It has come to me increasingly over the last 5 years, and right at the very start I'd like to tell you that I think I've completely changed as a journalist from the time I was at NDTV to what I'm doing at Times Now. A lot of people tell me you've completely changed. You were completely different at NDTV. We cannot in fact recognize the fact that it's the same or not, or it's somebody from that channel. And I ask myself today that if I were to walk back to NDTV, would I fit into that? And much as I admire Prannoy, I know that the answer is no. Because being in Mumbai and my professional and personal journey of my experiences over the last 7 years have taken me away from my own roots at NDTV. It has made me question why I am a journalist. I became a TV journalist completely by accident. I did not want to be a TV journalist. It was just a better job available in 1995. It paid more than being a print journalist. I got married and needed a job with a little bit more money. That's it. There's nothing more to it. Since 2005, everything has changed. And that's why when I was asked by Mr. Mittersain yesterday, what do you want to talk about? I want to talk to you about change. About the change that has happened in our country and what role we in the media have played towards making that change happen. And I want to present 3 questions before this audience today. Just 3 questions, and I will pepper it with my own examples. My first question is, and I want you to think about it, if in life you are presented a choice between what is right and what is wrong, between what is black and what is white, between what is moral and immoral, between what is honest and corrupt, where will you stand? Most of us, unfortunately in India, will say we are with the right, but in reality we'll be somewhere in the middle. We'll compromise. We have a chalta hai attitude in this country. This is the way it is. This is the way it has been. This is the way our parents did it. This is the way our children will do it. Yes, there is corruption. Yes, there are riots. Yes, there is a lot of communalism. Yes, there's a lot of injustice. But as long as we don't get our hands dirty, as long as we are safe, as long as what is happening wrong does not directly impact you or a member of your family, it is something that we choose to live with. And therefore my first question is, if you're presented an obvious choice between right and wrong, when facts will stare you in the face and tell you these are the facts for what is right and these are the facts for what is wrong, is it going to be a virtue to be a fence sitter? Now, I have been dealing with a few news stories over the last few days. Just before I came in, on my email I saw that the government of Punjab has sent me a big and long letter. It wants to know everything about me. It wants to know my salary. It wants to know what is the turnover of our company. It wants to know a great amount of details about us. And we know when governments send these letters what they're trying to say. They're basically trying to get under your skin. They're trying to make you afraid. I faced this many often. I just switched off my BlackBerry and I put it aside. Because this has happened so often. But do you know why this is happening? This is because last week we hammered the government of Punjab for what happened in Amritsar, where there's an assistant sub-inspector of police called Ravinder Pal Singh, about 53-year-old man. His daughter is about in her early 20s. As a general secretary of the Amritsar district Akali Dal, who moved from the Congress to the Akali Dal 2 months back. And he took a fancy to this young girl. He started following her. A complaint was put in the police station 3 weeks back. The SHO did not even move a finger on the complaint. In Amritsar in Punjab, will you take a complaint for a mere unsubstantiated charge of harassment, that too by a ruling party general secretary? He did nothing. So when this man continued to follow the young girl, this police officer went and confronted his man. His name is Ranjit Singh Ram. And he said, I am telling you and I am warning you to let my daughter alone. And this police officer had guns with him. He didn't shoot at him, but this guy pulled out his revolver and started shooting blindly. He first shot at the ceiling and then he started shooting to injure the person. And he shot the ASI on his legs and the ASI fell and he started bleeding. Then he realized he had run out of bullets in his revolver. So he goes back and there is a police station which is 100 meters away from where this incident is happening. And I know the government is blind and I know that sometimes the police pretends to be blind, but I cannot believe that a police assistant sub-inspector is shot and is lying down and his family is around him. And not one person moves from the police station. They'd rather let this man bleed to death than pick him up. So finally some onlookers picked him up and were putting him in his car. As they were putting him in his car, this man had gone back home. He took his rifle, he loaded his rifle, he came back, and just as this person was being taken into a jeep to be taken to the hospital, he pumped 5 bullets straight into him, and in full public glare, the ruling party politician just butchered an assistant sub-inspector. Now, why am I telling you this? Because when we are where we are today, and I think we need to sometimes understand how far removed we are from the reality of our own country. This is our country. And most unfortunately in our country, we have always been told that these are small incidents. These are very, very small incidents. In Hindi they say, "Baat ka batangar bana hai." This big deal is being made of it. I have heard this being told to me again and again and again. When this incident happened, for 2 days we hammered the government of Punjab. We made them feel ashamed of themselves. On the second day we opened the phone lines. On the second day we opened up on Twitter. On the third day we got the minister, we got 2 Akali Dal guys with him, and we surprised them because they kept saying it's a local incident, and I brought Newshour viewers from different parts of our country. So we got a Newshour viewer from Chennai. We got somebody from Bangalore. And we asked people whether they feel that this incident has any value or relevance to them. What we did in the process, and let me tell you, that night, that minister did not get a hammering from me. He got a hammering from a 21-year-old software professional in Bangalore. He got a hammering from a young MBA student in Chennai. And I just stepped back and I told myself, don't speak. Let the people take on these politicians. let it be direct. Because 5 nights every week I speak on behalf of what I think the public interest is. Today, let people speak for their public interest. And I found that the minister had to step back and back and back. And instead of the usual political arguments, because I also had the leader of the opposition, they were having usual sniping at each other. What did you do in Congress time? What do? You are bad, I'm bad, you have corrupt ministers, you have more corrupt ministers, you've carried out more murders. So this mutual recrimination which happens sometimes obfuscates the real issue. The real issue is who gets squashed in the process. It is the Aam Aadmi who Arvind Kejriwal says he represents. I'm surprised Arvind Kejriwal didn't say a word about all this. When we had it between the minister and the citizen, it was for me a subliminal moment in television. And therefore, I go back to my question. When I'm faced with right and wrong, do I take a stand on it? Is it something professionally wrong to take a stand on things? The one thing I'm criticized for again and again and again is that I take too much of a stand. I decided to let go of my emperor's clothes 6 years back when I launched Times Now. I decided I would not longer have the pretensions that Delhi's journalistic circles have. These pretensions that highfalutin, complicated things and vote swings are the only things that matter in news. For 4.5 decades in our country, we ruined news. For 5 decades in our country, our front pages of newspapers were full of ministers ribbon cutting and not questions on their misdeeds. For 55 years of independent India, before competition actually began to set in, a story like how Assistant Sub-Inspector Ravinder Pal Singh would have not featured. Believe me, the older generation in this audience knows कि अंदर के पेज में शायद छोटा सा brief जाए उस पे, maybe a 2-word mention. And there is no fear. When you have a 2-word mention in page 5, believe me, Sukhbir Singh Badal won't even spend 2 seconds on it. And that night, after the citizens from Bangalore spoke, a very top police officer was asked by Sukhbir Badal to call me to explain the case, and they said, no, we are giving a job to this girl. I said, you're not going to bring back her father. So that's my first question. I have taken a position, and I believe the future of journalism is in taking a position on what is right. When I joined this profession, I was told taking a position is completely and absolutely wrong. The second question which I want to raise here today is, what will happen when the media in this country is silenced? Have you heard the word sensationalism vis-a-vis the media? I'm sure you've heard it many, many times. I hear it every day. I'm asking you today, when I asked the Prime Minister of India a question directly in a press conference that has been called to explain the position on various camps, and instead of asking him a question on what he thinks Sachin Tendulkar should do, which most shockingly I saw a fellow editor sit in a press conference when there are scams happening all over, and within 1 week of the Devas ISRO scam being reported, I was sitting in 7 Racecourse Road, and one editor was giving the Prime Minister gyan on how to run the economy. And another editor said, what is your message for Sachin Tendulkar? I was appalled. I find this closeness between people in power and journalists absolutely revolting. Our job is to be against them, to be in a state of perpetual conflict with people in power. So when I asked the Prime Minister a question on how he cannot compromise with corruption, my question is, am I being sensationalist? And I was chided. I was pulled up by the Prime Minister's media advisor. I was told on live television telecast to millions of homes that this is not an inquisition. You cannot interrogate the Prime Minister of India. Prime Minister himself said, let him ask the question. But the Prime Minister's media advisor made a big scene out there. Anyway, he's no longer in his job, and I wish him well. But the fact is that the moment this press conference was over, there were other journalists who went out and were very strongly and proudly proclaiming that, editor was pulled up for asking this question. And I don't know till this date whether it is a crime to ask the Prime Minister of India a direct and straightforward question. The Prime Minister doesn't mind it. I don't know why his minders mind it. My question to you is this. Close your eyes and tell yourself, we are sitting at this IBG meeting, there has been no CWG scam. There has been no 2G scam. There has been no Devas ISRO scam. There has been no Adarsh scam. There have been no scams. And just close your eyes and imagine that the entire period of India's political history, from the period of end of June 2010 till February, March 2011, never happened. Just imagine it never happened. Let's obliterate 7 months from our life. And let's obliterate 7 news stories from the history of India. Ask yourself today, will this country have been the same? I asked this question in Guwahati, my hometown, 1 year back. When Arvind and Anna and all get very aggressive, I asked Arvind as well, 4 days back. I said, Arvind, where were you when I took the flak for the CWG scam? Where was Anna Hazare when we took the hit for reporting the 2G scam? Where was Kiran Bedi when we were reporting the Devas ISRO scam? Is it possible that these activists and these politicians, now politicians, actually took off on the wave of anger of people against corruption built and reported by the media? So ask yourself, what would have happened to India if these scams had never been reported? Would we have been a better country? My question is very simple. I know that many people say, and I've been looking at these quotes. So Kapil Sibal says, continuing preoccupation of the Indian media with corruption issues is undermining the nation's endeavors, is undermining the good work and the image of the country. The Prime Minister says negativity is being spread by the media, that the media only does negative stories. My simple question is, if these scams had never happened, would we have been a better country? My third question is this. What will happen if someone silences me and silences 10 other journalists and silences the media? And what happens if the media in this country dies? Let's imagine we have the media of, say, a complete Central African dictatorship. Are we going to be a better country? Some people will be very happy. They want the media to be silenced. They spread stories about the media. I admit the media makes mistakes. The Z News example is a shocking mistake. And I sat in a committee room 2 weeks back taking the difficult decision against the editor of that channel. But my question is, take these stories away, take the independence of the media away, take the scams away, take the anger away. Let the media not be silenced. May you not have a 9 o'clock news. May you not have an independent newspaper. May your Facebook and Twitter be silenced forever. May your criticism not be allowed. Will we be a better country? That's a question, I think, which the people of this country and influential people like you now need to begin and ask yourself. It's all right to champion the media and to say we watch the news. Are you arming the people who are putting the news out to you? It is not easy to do independent journalism in this country. Much as people think, it is not easy to be an independent journalist in this country. I can tell you what happened on the night of the Adarsh scam. The Chief Minister called me, Ashok Chavan, now ex-Chief Minister. And he said, stop the news. Just stop it. He didn't request me. It was a clear, straightforward instruction. And I told him, I'm sorry, it's gone on for too long. I'm not going to take back the story. At the most, I can request you to come on my program. I can only tell you he wasn't very pleasant with me. But the fact is, within 12 hours, he had to resign. Do I have an axe to grind against any politician? The answer is no. Why did Ashok Chavan resign? Ashok Chavan resigned because This no longer was a case of an environmental rule being flouted. This was a case of somebody using the name of Kargil, India's most unfortunately bloody war experience in recent years, the martyrdom of our soldiers, for personal profit. As long as you kept the story buried in page number 6 and said it was a story of environmental rules being flouted, believe me, no politician would have cared and it would have been the same chalta hai, so what, ho jayega, fix kar denge. Nothing happens, it's all right. But the moment you put the brutal reality of the story out, that no, it is not this. It is that in our country you even use the name of Kargil for private profit. Now you can turn around and tell me that I have 20 homes, I don't need another flat. It does not matter. You have 20 homes, your 21st flat, presumably, has been done by getting a signature using the name of Kargil. When this brutal reality is presented in a straightforward, honest and sometimes corrosive manner to these people, believe me, they cannot withstand the pressure. And I strongly believe that the time has come in this great country of ours to begin to tell the truth about our influential people and those who do wrongs among them in a direct manner. The younger generation in this country is very direct. I don't believe in indirect journalism. There is a lot of indirect journalism going on. There are people who fly down reporters based upon instructions from politicians and corporates. I think TV is a transparent medium. For all of you who told me we watch the news, I know that you watch the news because you believe in the news. The day your heart tells you that this news is stilted, is not honest, you will stop watching that channel or that newspaper. My commitment has completely changed. I now believe in making small changes and teaching big examples. Therefore, for me, somewhere, the biggest word that matters to me as an individual and a journalist today is simply the question of empathy. I try to put myself not in my shoes, thinking I'm the editor-in-chief of Times now, I have this influence or I can get this done. I simply put myself in the shoes of the weakest individual who has been traumatized the most. And I ask myself if I can fight, and my team of young journalists can fight a battle on their behalf. And even if I lose 99% of these battles, it does not matter to me anymore as long as I believe that I fought the battle. That is all that matters to me. Because my worldview changed. And I said, somebody said they met me at IMC, the Indian Merchants Chamber. I shared a very personal experience. We all make mistakes. I have made terrible mistakes. And I said at IMC, and I'll repeat this, and I'm sorry if there are some who will hear this a second time. I was just another ambitious, relatively young person who got a big break to start a channel. And all I wanted was more and more people should watch our channel. So one day we were covering Sanjay Dutt's chase from Pune to Arthur Road jail and from, between Pune and we had gone crazy, and there were 7 or 8 cameras, and the satellite trucks following him. We were all these telekinetic cameras, color-changing pictures. If you get a single shot of Sanjay Dutt, you'll amplify it 1,000 times. You'll put a red circle around it, and if you're a Hindi channel, you'll say Sanjay Dutt ki so and so, and then they'll play out the story. Then they'll ask people questions on Sanjay Dutt, and that's exactly what happens, because in our profession, we do a lot of this film stuff, criminal stuff. We think it'll get us the rating points. And I shared this story that afternoon one person called me and he said, I have followed you, I'll never ever watch you again. And I said, what have I done? Because I was in my own world in Lower Parel thinking I'm doing great things and great journalism. And he said that because, today my best friend died for our country. And he died, he was a 43-year-old full colonel going to take voluntary retirement. And he died on hand-to-hand combat with terrorists in Kashmir. Hand-to-hand combat. And I am a son of an army officer. My mama is an army officer. My brother-in-law is an army officer. My sister is in the Indian Air Force. I know what it means to be an army officer's son. And I know how it is, how we've been brought up to feel for our country. It's something different, When you see your father in uniform, when you see your sister in uniform, a sense of pride. You may not have money, but you have a lot of pride for the nation. And I felt, where have I come today? Have I become so cut off in my own world that I had to require this phone call from this man? So I told him, please come on my program tonight. And I was cleaning up my own conscience that night when I did the news art. And instead of Sanjay Dutt, I was going to talk to him. And that night, when I was going to go live, I did the story on this gentleman, and I'll tell you a story. His name is, go back and find out, Colonel Vasant Venugopal, because Colonel Vasant Venugopal in his dying moments changed my life. He was from the 9 Maratha Light Infantry Regiment. And this incident, when he took on 7 heavily armed infiltrators near Khoretal, 15 kilometers north of Uri town. These terrorists, on being detected, failed to escape towards the Pakistani side. They occupied dominating positions. And you can imagine it requires a very brave Indian Army officer to know that these terrorists have taken heights. And instead of sending his Havaldars and NCOs, this colonel, who 15 days from now was retiring and had a corporate job, he has 2 children, 7-year-old, 11-year-old. He took his guns and he led the troops. He went up to the front in an injured state. He hand-to-hand combat. He killed 3 of them. He gave the what is called the covering fire. He let the others go and he was shot himself. In which country, in which army in the world do senior officers do that? It's only in the Indian Army. I can tell you, being an army officer. And I had not even mentioned this. So I said that night, I'll do this. And we were going to go 30 seconds before, you do an audio check. Is my guest from Bangalore there? So our producer said, yes, she is there. And I said, she? I thought I spoke to a gentleman who was his best friend. He said, no. He said, his wife is come. And I was totally shocked. Because till 4:30, his wife was at her husband's final rites. And this lady in her 30s, with 2 young children, has cremated her husband and came and spoke. And I'm going to put this video up after this chat on YouTube and elsewhere and on our channel. And I want you to go back and watch how Subhashini Vasant spoke. She spoke about how proud she was of her husband, how she felt about the country. She had no bitterness that people were covering Sanjay Dutt. She spoke about her children. She spoke about how her son was coping with the tragedy and how her son was so proud of her father being a martyr, how her family reacted. Complete poise. And even today, I have told Subhashini this, that she changed my whole vision of news. My whole vision of news changed, sir. So Mr. Mittersain, you want to know why we did 2611 differently? You were there. And the only reason why we did it differently is because I don't look upon Pakistan in the same way anymore. And I don't look upon our country in the same way anymore. And somewhere I realized that we put our nation last. In our news, most unfortunately, we put everything first. Cinema first, cricket first, even scams first. We just put our nation last. And therefore I say today that, for example, I have a term, I say this is I don't believe in candy floss diplomacy with Pakistan. I am a great believer in good relationship between India and Pakistan. But if I have experienced that and felt that martyrdom of Vasant Venugopal in my bones, and I have heard Subhashini Venugopal, I will put my nation first. Why I have shared this example with you is because somewhere I do believe that the media can make a very, 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 very deep change in this country. And I also want to share with you some of my most passionate viewers are the youngest and the oldest. And I've asked myself, why do we have 85, 90-year-old men and women have called me? And there was this gentleman whose daughter came and met me recently, and he wrote me a letter every 3 days. He wrote me a letter of 6 pages on national issues. And in every letter, and then after he passed away, his wife came and met me, and she told me the story. I said, what was it about him that he wrote letters? He said, do you know what it is to have faced a different India for the large part of your life, where the common man has no voice at all, where you're kicked around from the bus conductor to the policeman to the school where you're going to look for your child's admission, to everywhere where you face a queue. Have you lived your whole life where you have to pay your way through? You have no citizen journalism. You have no scams being exposed. You have no Times Now. Even the media has not been your voice. If you've lived your entire life in that India, then they look upon, say, a channel like Times Now or Expose, and they say, I want to give them a little bit of my power as well. It is that power that makes us what we are. And this incident of Subhashini made me realize that the media has got its priorities completely wrong. Completely wrong. And it is because, eventually, it is because of one reason alone. We are afraid. The media is incredibly afraid. As they said, I think it's L.K. Advani who said this about the media during the emergency. You were asked to bend, but you chose to crawl. I don't know if you remember this quote. And we are representing a new wave in the Indian media today. My last question today to this audience, and should you call a spade a spade? Or should you take a position? Should you call a spade a spade? And if you're indirect in your form of expression, does it work? I call Maoists terrorists. And I don't know if you have analyzed the vocabulary and the lexicon of the Indian media. India's greatest internal security challenge will be described and justified by human rights activists in all ways, but you will not call them terrorists. We have people from Russia here in this audience. How do you describe those who are trying to break up your country? They are terrorists. That's it. You don't use sophisticated language against them. If they are going to be brutal with 4-year-old children and 3-year-old children, if they're going to rape and murder young children, if they are going to indoctrinate these people in methods that don't belong to the contemporary civilized age, and they are not leftists, and they are carrying out the most brutal methods out there. And recently, Ramachandra Guha told me a wonderful story that he said, I went to a village in this Naxal-occupied part of Chhattisgarh, and he said, these people come to us, these Maoists, and they come to us, they take their AK-47 and their rifles, and they put their rifles like they used to put a lathi in the old days, and then they tell the people of this village, Acha, aap batao, aapko kya chahiye? Aapki kya rai hai? And the villager says, you put an AK-47 like that, and then you ask me, what do you want? He's the greatest at it. But there are sophisticated, so-called high-flying circles in India who justify this, who don't call them terrorists, who fight for their human rights. There are people who write very long essays about how Kashmir must be liberated from India. Within our own country, do we call a spade a spade? I will just give you one example of calling a spade, which made me very unpopular among certain sections of the media. There's a man called Syed Ghulam Nabi Fai. You heard of him? You know Syed Ghulam Nabi Fai is? Syed Ghulam Nabi Fai basically has been paid large amounts of money by the ISI to run a little cottage industry in America, where he flies down important or nondescript retired politicians, diplomats and journalists, flies them business class to America, puts them up in a fancy hotel, gives them fine champagne, organizes seminars where they abuse India, abuse India's human rights record, abuse their own country, and then fly back. And then he publishes all of this under some other name and says, look, this is what Indians feel about their own country. This was happening for years. I have done very unpopular things in my last few years in journalism. I'm surprised they still let me do it. I went after Fai. And I realized as I opened up the layers, there were a lot of people who I knew who had been on Fai's cocktail circuit. And I told them, there is no free lunch. But when we took them on, I found that there was a similarity in the kind of people we are talking about. The same people who defend Maoist terrorists are the same people who are also going to attend 5 seminars. What's going on? Is there a group of people in our country who would rather have India tear up? Let there be some, fission in India, let this country break up. Is there a lobby in our country which wants to see separatism in Kashmir and Maoist insurgencies grow? Do these people live the lives they talk about? Do they live simple lives? Do they travel business class, cocktail circuits, high-flying seminars in New York and London on different days? Are they the real India? Or have we, the silent majority of our country, given up our country to these people? And we call them intellectual circles. These intellectual circles are never asked where they stand on their own country. And the journalism that we do, and why I'm giving this last example is, because among the various things we do, is that we do believe that good journalism can help reclaim the nation back to the people who actually represent the nation. A small clique of people who are not loyal to their own country cannot represent our great country. And that's my last point to you. And for a very long time, we have let these people run that clique. After 26/11, I also realized the nature of discussion and discourse in this country must change. It must become participative. Some ministers called me from Delhi after 26/11. Now, who are these people who you are getting onto your shows to talk about Pakistan and terrorism? They are citizens. Oh, what do these people know? Get some experts. Get some people who know. After 26/11, ask yourself, did all of Mumbai not stand up? And overnight, all the people here who maybe never had views on this suddenly began spouting on these issues. My question is, they too are citizens of the country. They have a right to spout as much as you have a right to preach. They have a right to assert themselves as much as you have a right to say that you represent the views of the country. This silent majority in our country is sometimes too immersed in its own life. And this is something beautiful and fascinating I find about Mumbai. I just love this city. It has adopted me and I love every part of it. But where I feel that I can just add a small dimension before I wrap up is, this can become also another intellectual hub for India. It does not only have to be the business hub. It does not mean that, there's a political and intellectual hub and there is a business hub. It does not need to be discrete. The people of Mumbai are as much the voice of this country as the people of Delhi, the people of Kolkata. We cut our country into different parts. You want a software voice? Bangalore. Want a political voice? Delhi. Diplomatic voice from Bombay? Impossible. Business voice? Bombay. Cultural voice, a literary voice? Kolkata. Anti-insurgency voice? Assam or Kashmir. We have divided our country into zones. You ask yourself, how many times have we had a discussion about Mumbai becoming an intellectual capital? 26/11 was very important for me. And the reason I revisit it every year, because I found the whole city come up and ask questions about the country's strategic policy, country's approach to terrorism, and this is a voice which now needs to come out and explode in all parts of this country. So finally, I'll say one thing to you. We are on the verge. I've raised a few key questions to you. I will repeat them now so that you can think about it much after this talk is over. The first point is this: when you will be faced between right and wrong, will you choose to be a fence sitter? The second question I'll ask you is, what will happen when the media of this country suddenly gets silenced? Will this country be a better country? And the third and most important question that I have for you is, at this point of time, is it time in our country to call a spade a spade? I want you to think about it. And I hope this has been worth it for you to come and spend some time here. I want to also say one last thing. I am totally overwhelmed with the number of people who are tuning on to TV. And next month onwards, in January, we are completely changing the format of our channels, new main program, News Up, where I will just make it completely open to the people. And instead of just having politicians, I am going to get more and more voices, old, young, new, children, anyone. Let people participate in the nation's news. We'll make that change. So thank you to IBG. Thank you for calling me, and I'm completely at your disposal. Thank you.